I was at a live webinar recently where Nick Sanastaso said something that stopped me in my tracks. He said, praise is poison. And my first reaction was actually defensive because I like praise. I like when someone notices the effort. I like when directors smile whenever I finish a combo. I like when my post resonates. I like the applause and it feels good. It feels affirming. It feels like proof that I am doing something that matters. So when I heard that phrase, I thought, that's dramatic. But the longer I sat with it, the more I realized it wasn't about praise being bad. It was about praise becoming dangerous when you depend on it. Praise becomes poison when your nervous system relies on it to feel safe. When applause isn't appreciated, it's required, and validation isn't extra, it's oxygen. And the way Nick explained it completely shifted how I see performance, validation, and even motherhood. And that's when I had to ask myself something that honestly exposed me. If no one clapped, would I still do it? Would I still dance if no one was watching? Would I still train if no one posted about it? Would I still show up online if no one commented? Would I still rebuild my body if no one complimented it? Or would I slowly shrink? Hey y'all, I'm Sadie, a dancer, a mama, and a Navy wife. And if you're here, this is Becoming Her Again, where we talk about rediscovering who we are after motherhood, after burnout, after seasons that stretch us so far, we barely recognize ourselves. And if that sounds like a season you're in, be sure to subscribe. I chat with you weekly, and I'm here to support you on your journey. So today we're going to be talking about something that honestly made me uncomfortable when I first heard it. And if I'm being honest, there have been seasons where silence felt like rejection. There have been moments when a post didn't perform well and it affected my mood more than I wanted to admit. And there have been auditions where not being chosen felt like a verdict of my worth, not just feedback on my performance. And there have been days in motherhood when no one saying good job made me feel invisible. And none of that is about ego, it's about wiring. It's about conditioning, especially as dancers. From the time we were little, dancers have trained to perform. We rehearse for judges, we compete for scores, we audition for callbacks, we perfect routines so someone else can evaluate them. And your body learns something in that process. It learns that approval equals safety, applause equals belonging, and being picked equals value. And when judges smile, your body relaxes. When the crowd cheers, your chest expands. When you make the team, you feel chosen. And being chosen feels stabilizing. It feels like proof that you are enough. But here's where it gets subtle. When being chosen becomes identity, when applause becomes identity, when the uniform becomes identity, when the title becomes identity. Because when your identity is built on applause, silence becomes threatening, and silence is inevitable. There are off seasons, there are injuries, there are years you don't make it. There are seasons when you are not on a stage. There are days when you're dancing alone in your living room with no one watching. And in those moments, you find out if you're performing or if you're expressing. Because performing and expressing are not the same thing. Performing says, please approve of me, and expressing says, this is who I am. Performing seeks validation. Expression exists regardless of it. Performance tightens your energy. Expression softens it, and you can feel that difference in a room. Think about auditions. You can always tell when a dancer is dancing to be picked. There's a slight urgency in the movement, a slight gripping, a subtle overperforming quality. It's not that she's not talented, it's that she's dancing from need. Now, think about the dancer who is grounded. She's calm, she's present. She's not scanning the judges' faces. She's not mentally calculating whether she nailed it. And she's there to share. She's already belonging to herself, and that energy is magnetic because the calmest person in the room is the most powerful. But calm only exists when you are not dependent on the outcome, when applause is sweet but not necessary. And I had to confront that fact that I've built part of my identity on applause, on being chosen, on being seen, on being validated. And when that validation disappeared, even temporarily, I felt unsteady. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I was wired for feedback, wired to look for reaction, and wired to measure myself through response. And that wiring doesn't just disappear when you step off the stage. It follows you into adulthood. It follows you into business. It follows you into social media, and it follows you into motherhood, which is where it got really uncomfortable for me because motherhood stripped away my applause. There's no judges table in motherhood. There's no scorecards. There's no callbacks. There's no applause after bedtime. There's just repetition, responsibility, exhaustion, and love. And if your nervous system is wired for validation, motherhood can be destabilizing because there is no consistent feedback loop. No one is grading you. No one is handing you a trophy for patience. No one is clapping because you kept it together during a meltdown. It's invisible work. And if your identity was built on applause, invisibility feels threatening because silence can feel like rejection when you're so used to validation. And there were days postpartum where I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel seen, I didn't feel praised, and I realized how much my confidence had been externally reinforced, how much my nervous system relied on someone reacting positively towards me. Motherhood forced me to sit in that silence, and that silence exposed where I was dependent. Because when no one is clapping, you either collapse or you build internal belonging. And belonging has to become primary. If you don't belong to yourself, you will chase belonging everywhere else, in teams, in likes, in comments, in compliments, in reassurance. And chasing belonging gets so exhausting because it's never permanent. Applause fade, comments slow down, seasons change, bodies shift, auditions end. If your confidence is built on reaction, you will constantly monitor. You will refresh the analytics. You will scan the faces. You will replay the conversations. You'll analyze the tone. You'll question yourself. And that mental loop is so draining. And I don't want to live like that. I don't want silence to control me. I don't want metrics to control me. I don't want the applause to control me. I want applause to be extra. I want validation to be so sweet. I don't want it to be necessary. And here's the part that really shifted something for me. I started noticing how often I check for reactions, not just online, like in real life, in conversations, in dance class, in motherhood. I would say something and subconsciously scan the room for a response. And I would post something vulnerably and feel my body tense while waiting to see how it was received. I would finish a workout and immediately wonder if someone noticed the progress. That waiting energy is subtle, but it's so heavy. Because when you are consistently waiting for validation, you are never fully at rest. You are always leaning forward, always reaching, always bracing for more approval or if you're gonna get rejected, and bracing for that, your nervous system slightly activates each time. And that's so exhausting. And I don't think we talk about how exhausting that is, especially for women who have been such high achievers, especially for the dancers who have been trained to perform, and especially for moms who feel like everything they do is being quietly evaluated, even if it's not. That's this internal pressure to do it right, to look right, to bounce back fast enough, to not lose yourself, but also to fully give yourself. And when there is no applause to signal that you're doing well, you can start to feel lost. And I remember one specific moment right after becoming a mom when I realized how much of my confidence had been externally reinforced. I had spent years in environments where feedback was immediate. You do the combo, the director reacts. You post the video, the numbers respond. You show up, someone acknowledges it. And then suddenly, I was in a season where I was pouring out constantly and there was no applause. No instant validation, just long days and quiet nights. And I felt invisible. Not because I wasn't valued, but because I was used to reaction. And that's when the question really hit me again. If no one clapped, would I still do it? Would I still show up for myself? Would I still rebuild my body? Would I still move, create, speak, dance, if there was no reaction attached to it? And the honest answer at first was uncomfortable because I realized that there were areas where I had been fueled more by the applause than by love. And that distinction matters because love sustains you. Applause spikes you. Love is steady where applause is temporary. Love is internal and applause is external. And when your motivation is built on spikes, you will constantly need another hit, another compliment, another comment, another confirmation, another moment of being chosen. But when your motivation is built on love, it becomes quieter, more grounded, less dramatic. You don't need the spike to keep going. You move because it feels aligned, not because it's being watched. Let's bring this back to dance in a very real way. So think about training. There is a huge difference between training because you love the craft and training because you want someone to notice your improvement. One of those feels expansive, right? The other feels very tight. If you are constantly thinking about who will see it, who will validate it, who will praise it, then your relationship with the craft becomes transactional. I do this, so I get it. I train so hard so I can get picked. I perform well so I can get the applause. I show up so I can get that approval. And when the approval doesn't come, the motivation collapses. But when you train because you love it, the training itself is enough. It's not a means to applause. It's an expression of who you are. I've been in both spaces. I've been in the space where every audition felt like a reference towards my worth, and that being cut felt like I wasn't enough as a human, where making a team felt validating to my identity. And I've also been in a space where I danced just because I wanted to feel connected to myself again. No audition attached, no audience attached, just me in a room remembering who I was. And the energy in both of those spaces are completely different. One is anxious and the other is grounded. One is desperate, the other is steady. And steadiness is so powerful. Now, motherhood adds even another layer on this because in motherhood, there are no trophies, right? There is no applause for the invisible labor. And if you are someone who has been conditioned to feel valuable when praised, that transition can feel destabilizing. And you can start questioning yourself even more. You can start needing reassurance more. You can start comparing yourself even more. And comparison is just another form of seeking applause. It's looking sideways to measure your worth. And that sideways glance keeps you unsteady because someone will always look like they're doing it better. Someone will always look more put together. Someone will always look further along. And if your worth is tied to being seen as enough, you will consistently be chasing an invisible standard. So what does it actually look like to break that dependence on praise? It doesn't mean you stop enjoying compliments. It doesn't mean that you reject affirmation. It means you stop needing it to regulate yourself. It means your nervous system can remain steady even in the silence. It means that you can post something meaningful and not spiral if it doesn't perform. It means you can dance in a room without scanning faces. It means that you can mother without consistent reinsurance. It means that you can exist without performing for approval. That shift requires awareness, and you have to start noticing when your body is leaning forward, waiting for a reaction, and you have to notice when you feel tense, checking the metrics. You have to notice when silence becomes uncomfortable, because that discomfort is information. It's showing you where you've outsourced belonging. And outsourcing belonging will always leave you fragile, because external reaction is inconsistent. Sometimes people will clap, sometimes they won't. Sometimes posts will perform, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you will get chosen, and sometimes you won't. If your internal stability rises and falls with that fluctuation, you will live in a constant state of micro-anxiety. I don't want that anymore. I don't want my peace determined by reaction. I don't want my confidence determined by applause. I don't want my nervous system regulated by metrics. I want to dance because I love it. I want to speak because it's true. I want to mother because it matters. I want to build identity from the inside out. So here's what I started doing. When I feel the urge to check, to seek, to measure, I pause. I take a breath and I ask myself, if no one clapped, would this still matter to me? And if the answer is yes, I continue. But if the answer is no, I get curious. Not judgmental, curious. Why do I need applause here? What part of me feels unseen? What part of me feels unsafe in this silence? Because silence isn't rejection. Silence is just neutral. But when you're wired for applause, neutral can feel threatening. And I'm learning to sit in that neutral, to let quiet be quiet, and to let applause be extra instead of essential. And I think this is especially important for women rebuilding themselves after motherhood, because there's a temptation to perform your comeback, to perform your bounce back, to perform your strength, to perform your balance. And when you perform your rebuilding, you're still seeking applause. But when you rebuild because it feels aligned, because it feels like you're coming home to yourself, that's expression. And expression is sustainable. Performance is exhausting. And I want to be someone who would still dance even if no one watched. I want to be someone who would still speak even if no one commented. I want to be someone who would still show up even if there was no applause, because that's internal stability. That's grounded identity. That's belonging that can't be taken away by silence. So let me ask you again, where in your life are you performing instead of expressing? Where are you leaning forward, waiting for that reaction? Where are you tying your worth to applause? And what would shift if applause became optional? If validation became sweet but not necessary? If silence stopped feeling threatening? Because praise isn't evil, but dependence is fragile. And I'm done building identity on fragile things. I'm building on something steadier, something internal, something that doesn't disappear when the room gets quiet. And the way Nick explained it completely shifted how I see performance, validation, and even motherhood. There's something else I want to say about this, because I don't think we fully understand what validation does to our nervous system. When you are used to applause, your brain releases dopamine in response to praise. That little spike feels energizing. It feels rewarding. It feels like moving forward. But dopamine spikes are temporary. They rise and then they drop. And when they drop, you feel the absence. And when you feel the absence, you go looking for the next hit. That's why checking metrics can become so addictive. That's why you open an app without thinking. That's why you refresh. That's why you look at the views again. And it's not vanity, it's conditioning. Okay? Your brain learned that reaction equals reward. So when there's no reaction, your brain feels like something is missing. Now imagine that same pattern inside an audition season. You get a call back, dopamine spikes. You make the team, dopamine spikes. You get praise in rehearsal, dopamine spikes. But then there's a week without feedback, or a practice where you're not highlighted, or a year that you don't make it. And the drop feels heavier than it should, because your brain was used to that spike. That's how praise quietly controls you. It teaches you to associate external responses with internal safety. And then you step into motherhood and there are no spikes, no instant applause, no consistent reinforcement. Just long stretches of quiet effort. And if you've been living off of spikes, that quiet feels flat. It can even feel like failure. And not because you are failing, but because your nervous system is adjusting to a different rhythm. Motherhood is steady, it's repetitive, it's invisible. It doesn't spike you, it anchors you. And if you don't know how to anchor yourself internally, that transition feels destabilizing. So here's what this looks like practically, okay? Tomorrow, in real life, it looks like dancing in your kitchen without filming it. It looks like finishing a workout and not immediately checking who noticed. It looks like posting something meaningful and deciding ahead of time that you're not gonna measure your mood by those numbers. It looks like putting your phone down after sharing and letting it exist without you hovering over it. It looks like parenting through a hard moment and not needing someone to validate that you handled it well. It looks like choosing alignment over applause. And that doesn't mean you won't enjoy praise when it comes. It just means it won't control you when it doesn't. Because here's the truth. Applause is loud. Expression, it's quiet. Applause is external. Expression is internal. Applause can be taken away. Expression can't. If tomorrow every platform disappeared, if every stage disappeared, if every uniform disappeared, would you still do it? That question isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to ground you. Because if you are only existing when someone is watching, then silence will always feel threatening. But if you can exist regardless of the reaction, the silence becomes peaceful. And I want peace more than I want applause. I want steadiness more than I want spikes. I want to dance because it feels like home, not because it earns me validation. I want to mother with intention, not from performance. I want to build identity from the inside out, because praise is beautiful when it's extra, it's dangerous when it's necessary. And the version of me I'm becoming is someone who would still move, still speak, still build, still show up, even if the room stayed quiet. And if this hits you, if you felt seen in this, I want you to sit with it. Don't rush to fix it, just notice it, okay? Notice where you reach for the applause. Notice where the silence feels uncomfortable, okay? And start asking yourself the question that changed everything for me. If no one clapped, would I still do this? And tell me in the comments, where does this really show up for you? I want you to answer this honestly. And if the answer is yes, if no one clapped, I'd still do it, then keep going. Because that's real. That's expression, and that's you. So if you're still here, drop this emoji below, just so I know that you stayed to the end. And as always, I want you to remember, you are stronger than you think.